Hi, it's Erin from Flying Off the Bookshelf, and today we're going to be talking about the differences between Disneyland and Disney's California Adventure, also known as DCA. Now, if you have the time, obviously you should visit both of these parks, but if you're having to make a choice between the two of them, we're going to break down all the differences to help you decide. First, let's talk about location. Now, both of these parks are located in the Disneyland Resort in Anaheim, California, and actually they're right next to each other. If you're coming from Disney World, this is a big change. Where in Disney World, you would have to hop on some kind of transportation to go to a different park. At Disneyland, you can literally just walk across the Esplanade and park hop in about 2 minutes. So, if you have a park hopping ticket, you can easily visit both parks in a day. Now, you won't be able to get to all the rides in both parks in a day, but you can see them both. Disneyland and California Adventure are also very similar in size. However, Disneyland does have a lot more rides than DCA. So let's talk about the different lands you'll find at each park. At Disneyland, of course, you have Fantasyland with classic rides like Peter Pan and Snow White and Dumbo. There's Toontown, where Mickey and Minnie live. You have Tomorrowland with Space Mountain. There's also Adventureland, Critter Country, and New Orleans Square. You also have their newest land, which is Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Now, while Galaxy's Edge is in Hollywood Studios at Disney World, I think if you're coming from Disney World, Disneyland is obviously the most similar to Magic Kingdom. California Adventure is very different. I think it has a vibe similar to Hollywood Studios and Disney World, and you'll find some really uniquely themed lands here, like Pixar Pier, that's full of Pixar characters, and Cars Land, which is a beloved land themed after the Cars movies. And of course, you have their newest land, Avengers Campus, where you will find all of your Marvel superheroes. So let's talk about the different rides in each park. Obviously, we can't go through every single ride here, but here are some of the rides that are especially unique or iconic for each park. So in Disneyland, you're going to get your dark rides like Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan's Flight, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Snow White's Enchanted Wish, and you have your classic It's a Small World. You also have the roller coasters like Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Space Mountain, and the Matterhorn bobsleds. You have classic rides like the Jungle Cruise and Pirates of the Caribbean, and you also have my favorite ride in all of Disneyland, which is Indiana Jones Adventure. Disneyland also has some newer rides. In Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, you have Smuggler's Run and Rise of the Resistance, and in Toontown, you'll find Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. At California Adventure, you have less rides, but there are some really unique ones. DCA has the Incredicoaster, which is the only roller coaster of the two parks that has an inversion. You also have Marvel rides like Web Slingers, which is a family-friendly Spider-Man ride, and Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, which is a rethemed Tower of Terror. There are also some rides you'll find at California Adventure that are also in Disney World, like Toy Story Midway Mania and Soarin'. And then you have Cars Land, which is iconic to DCA, and you have Radiator Springs Racers there, which is probably the most popular ride of both the parks. Now let's talk about dining. Both parks have some great dining choices, and they both have table service restaurants and quick service restaurants, and I'll just cut to the chase here and say that I think California Adventure has better food. At DCA, you have restaurants like Carthay Circle, which has some amazing upscale dishes. There's also Lamplight Lounge, which is a classy Pixar-themed table service restaurant. And you have quick service options like Pym's Test Kitchen in Avengers Campus, which is a really fun restaurant with inventive food, and Flo's V8 Cafe, which is a kid favorite. Disneyland still has good options. You have Blue Bayou, which is a table service restaurant that's inside Pirates of the Caribbean, although the food there can be hit or miss, and you have some solid quick service options like Bengal Barbecue or Docking Bay 7. So you'll find good food in both parks, but I just think the food at California Adventure is a cut above. Okay, here's a really big difference between the two parks: crowds. If you are looking for less crowds, I would recommend going to California Adventure. There's a couple reasons for this. First, Disneyland is the more popular park of the two because it's the classic, and it's also an older park, so you're gonna feel those crowds. The sidewalk spaces just aren't as big. For example, the Fantasyland area can get really crowded, and the queues in Fantasyland are very small and narrow, and honestly a little claustrophobic. DCA, though, is a newer park, and so they built it to accommodate more crowds. There are bigger walkways, more open spaces, the lines aren't as narrow, And it's also not quite as popular of a park as Disneyland, so there's just less people there usually. Okay, let's break down the pros and cons. Here are my pros for Disneyland. It's the classic Disney park that Walt Disney had a hand in creating and opened himself. It has classic rides and tons of family-friendly rides that are great for the kiddos. The cons of Disneyland Park for me are that it gets more visitors than DCA, so it feels more crowded, and also I don't think the food is quite as good. For California Adventure, the pros are that you have some really great unique rides and some super immersive and fun themed lands, and it also has better food, and it also doesn't feel as crowded. The cons for DCA are that there are less rides, and especially less rides that younger kids will love. And it also doesn't necessarily feel like a park with a unified theme. It's kind of been added on to with these unique themed lands, which is fun and I love it, but it doesn't have the same classic charm that Disneyland does. So, which one should you visit? Here's my recommendation. If you have young children, you want to see classic characters and classic rides, and maybe you have a Star Wars fan in your family, then Disneyland is the place to go. But if you're traveling with older kids, you have Marvel fans in your family, and you want some bigger thrill rides and better food, go to California Adventure. So that's a wrap on comparing Disneyland and California Adventure. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, hit like and subscribe, and have a great time at the Disneyland Resort.